Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rio Grande Current podcast. I am Fabiola Escalon. Today, we are talking about hunger in the Rio Grande Valley, what's happening with federal nutrition programs like SNAP, and an important community dialogue coming up on February the 3rd, 2026. I'm joined by Felipe Salinas, who's deeply involved in hunger advocacy here in the Valley through Bread of the World. Felipe, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Fabiola. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about
Yes.
this.
Yes, of course. So, Felipe, let's start with you. Can you
Mhm.
share a little bit about your background and what first drew you into hunger advocacy?
Well, I don't want to talk too long about it, but it goes all the way back to the fact that I came of age in the 60s and the 70s in Stark County, and coming from a family very involved in Stark County politics. So we could talk about that another day.
Oh,
But
wow.
but at
I would
any
love to
rate,
hear about it.
yeah. But at any rate, I guess I grew up always aware that politics mattered, what we are, and it went beyond just who we voted for, that we needed to learn about the issues and become engaged. So yeah, it kind of started there.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
and
How did you get involved with Bread of the World? And what's kept you committed to this work over time?
well, yeah. So Bread for the World, I learned about it. I guess it goes back a little bit. When I was in college in the early '70s, I guess I had what you might call a religious reawakening.
Hmm.
I was raised and I still remain Catholic, but it all became more personal for me. It became a more personal faith. Right after I finished college in 1975, I became more aware that our faith was not only a personal thing, but also had a social aspect to it, that we needed to put that faith into action and in all aspects of our life, including our political life, our life as citizens. So right around that time, I don't remember exactly when, I was reading a magazine and I either saw an article or an ad for this brand new organization that was founded in 1974 called Bread for the World. And I signed up because it sounded like this is a way I can marry both my concerns as a Christian, as a Catholic, as a faith person of faith, to what I believe we needed to try to do to on the social issues that we saw
Give
happening
back.
around us.
Give
Yeah.
back, right?
Yeah, and I've been involved with Bread ever since. I got married a few years later, and my wife Kathy and I have been engaged ever since with Bread. And so
Wonderful.
we've continued to remain engaged because we have learned that Bread, we call it Bread for short. It's a respected organization in Washington D.C. It's seen as a reliable and responsible organization that works in a bipartisan way when it comes to information about and action concerning hunger, both on the domestic and the international fronts. And what we also like about it, it's not only effective in Washington, D.C., but it's one of those rare organizations that has a national presence, but also goes to the grassroots. It does a great job of educating and equipping ordinary people like us, Christians from all denominations, about hunger and the asks that should make of our members of Congress on hunger at every step of the legislative process.
How
So,
interesting.
finally, what we also like about Bread is that it collaborates with a lot of other faith-based and hunger-focused organizations. For example, U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, Presbyterian Church USA, United Methodist Church, and other Christian denominations, but also with from other faiths. They're very involved with Mazan, which is the Jewish anti-hunger organization, similar to Bread, and with Islamic Relief that works with our Muslim communities, and with other non-faith-based organizations like Feeding America, the Alliance to End Hunger, and many others. So they work across on this issue along with both faith-based, church-based, and other organizations to try to advance the better policies concerning hunger.
So that is so very interesting. So Bread for the World works from a Christian faith perspective, but stays nonpartisan. So how does that shape the way you advocate, especially here in the Rio Grande Valley?
Well, Kathy and I are volunteers. We're just members of Bread, and we're active in our own church. But we also are trying to begin by organizing, getting the word out to other churches that are engaged, trying to engage them in this kind of work. But we also recognize in the Valley, we're blessed with people who care about this issue, regardless of their religious identity. So we're
Hmm.
also trying to engage with people of other faith traditions and with our nonprofit sector and our local governmental sectors. I think we all have a role that we can play
Yes.
in this kind of work.
Locally, you have helped organize the offering. It's called Offering of Letters, and also
Mm-hmm.
participate in national advocacy, as you mentioned earlier. What kind of impact have you actually seen from those efforts? And
Sure.
if
Let
you
me
can tell
first tell
me,
you, yeah,
Mhm.
what the offering letters is.
Yes,
Right.
yes, yes.
That's
I
right.
was gonna ask.
Yeah. So essentially, an offering letters is an action that a church or other group can take. And if it's a church, like on a given Sunday, where the homily, the sermon, or the preaching, or the other education leading up to that Sunday focuses on hunger, our call to act as Christians in response to hunger, and then about a specific issue that we're working on at that time. So then, either during the worship service or more often after the service, people are invited to stay around and take a few minutes to write a letter to our members of Congress, our congresswoman or congressmen, our senators,
Mm.
on a specific piece of legislation that they're considering at that time. And then what happens is the letters are collected and then either mailed to our representatives or taken to their local office to show them that there are people in their community, their constituency, that are concerned about this issue. And we know that those letters can make a difference, especially if they come from all over the country at a given few months, let's say in the spring on a specific issue. And they get the attention of our members of Congress, that there are people who care about hunger, and especially as people of faith, and they're asking that member of Congress to take specific action. That's before them. Um, so when we yeah, that's pretty much it. So our that's what we're trying to do, is to get more organizations and churches involved in this.
As a grassroots organizer, I just want to
Mhm.
tell you, where have you been my whole life?
well, well,
Because I advocate the whole reason why I have Substack, and I keep insisting on my social media posts, get involved, get
mhm,
organized, call your representatives, use, this
mhm,
application, the
yeah,
Five Calls app, making it makes a difference. It makes a difference. We
yeah,
know that writing letters or calling representatives makes a difference, especially
yeah,
as exactly as you're saying, it's on the same issue, the same topic.
right,
They will listen. They will listen.
yeah,
So I wish
and
they.
and and it's not only to let them know. I mean, the thing that we've experienced when somebody writes a letter, often for the first time, is that they are empowered. It's a very empowering action, because they realize that, yes, this is allowing me to express my views, my beliefs, and put language in there. It says I'm doing this because I'm a Christian, because I care about them. The Bible, calls us to do this. Because taking that first step is saying I'm not only concerned about hunger, but it translates that concern into action. And that is a very powerful action. It can be the first step of many that they can begin taking. So,
Very, very powerful. I think that, and I was just interviewing a guest just before you, and I was letting him know, again, as a grassroots organizer, that a lot of people feel shy. They shy away from
mm-hmm,
this. It's confrontational, perhaps. They feel
mm-hmm,
confrontational. They feel that they should be quiet, that they don't want to make any trouble.
mm-hmm,
And it really is the opposite. It's empowering. It's
mm-hmm.
empowering because
Yes,
you're calling for other people, not yourself. You're calling for action for people who can't speak for themselves or who are not able. So,
yes.
wow, I am so impressed with all this. But um,
Yeah,
for time,
you also mentioned our at the national level. Can I just tell you briefly about
yeah.
besides the offering of the letters, we have, especially the last few years, especially since our Congresswoman, Monica de Cruz, was named to the Agriculture Committee, which is a very key committee when it comes to hunger policy. We attend Bread's annual advocacy summit in June. And what that is basically where hundreds of members of Bread for the World and other supporters come together in Washington, D.C. for a couple of days of learning about the issues. Also, there are great opportunities for prayer and worship together, and they're interfaith. We have great music, great preaching. Um, but then it leads to that third day, which is when we actually visit with our members of Congress, and we go as a group, either to our congressperson's office or to our senator's office, and we present our request to them. And so last year we were fortunate. There were six of us that came from the Rio Grande Valley, including a student from UTRGV for the first time, because Bread brought together about 80 college students to also start talking about the issue of hunger on college campuses, which is
Wow,
a
that is so real. That is
yeah,
very
it
real.
is. And so this summer we're hoping that we can take a little bit larger group. So we're actually looking for folks that want to come they want to come with us.
Can you tell us a little bit, because that was my follow-up question. How does
Mhm.
someone become a member, or is there
Sure.
fees, or how does somebody
No.
get involved?
Yeah, there is not a fee. I mean, it is. I'll say at the outset, Bread for the World does not receive a single penny of any kind of government funding. It's entirely supported through donations and gifts of its supporters. So there's not a requirement to send any money. You become a member by just going to bread.org, and I think you'll share that link a little bit later on and
Real.
learn about it. Right on the front page. There's a take action button where it'll tell you what is it that we're working on this moment. And if you do that, it'll take you to a letter that's already kind of written for you. You put in your information. You can then revise the letter and it'll send that email to our members of Congress directly. But
As a Catholic myself, I had never heard of Bread for the World, or maybe I didn't pay attention. Ho- maybe this deserves a second interview,
mhm, sure.
because I want to talk about um, the event that's coming up.
Yes.
Yes, it's a very important event coming up. And so I saw that event on my social media and I
Mhm,
shared it. And that's how you and I came to talking, because I shared. I thought it was a really interested event.
sure.
So there's a dialogue happening on February the 3rd. Can you explain what this event is about and why it
Sure.
matters right now?
Yeah.
Plans?
Yeah. Yeah, so we're really excited because we've confirmed and we're going to be joined that day. We're very blessed to have Reverend Eugene Cho, who is the president of Bread for the World, and he's one of the nation's most respected and well-known evangelical pastors and ministers. And he'll be here in the Valley on that day, February the 3rd, for the public dialogue with Sister Norma Pimentel, who heads up Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley, around that issue of hunger and what
Mhm.
our faith calls us to do as Christians and people of faith and citizens in general. So you don't necessarily have to be a Catholic or a Christian to come. It's open to
Right,
everyone.
right.
Um, and what we're called to do in response to that. So it's taking place that evening of February 3rd at 7 p.m. at St. John the Baptist Catholic Church in San Juan. And we will have interpretation service available in Spanish also for those
Wonderful.
that require
Wonderful.
that.
Why is Sister Norma such a critical voice for the Valley, especially when we talk about hunger and human dignity?
Well, sure. I mean, she's very well known. She hardly needs an introduction. I think we all know very well in the Valley over the last several years the work that Catholic Charities has done under her leadership, assisting our asylum seekers and our refugees here in the Valley. Due to changes in federal policy and so on, those numbers are a lot less than they are now. But I think we need to also realize that Catholic Charities has always and continues to also help families here in the Valley that are facing homelessness, for example, with temporary rent and housing assistance. They also help to support over 40 food parishes at our food pantries at our Catholic churches, alongside the other 270 or so that the food bank of the Rio Grande Valley
Hmm.
works with. And of course, we all know that Catholic Charities responds when there's a disaster in our area with assisting families that are due to flooding or hurricanes or other kinds of disasters. So, as a social services arm of the Catholic Diocese of Brownsville, it's a nonprofit with a unique valley-wide reach. It covers all four
Absolutely.
counties of the valley. But Sister Norma, going back to her, not only charities is Catholic Charities, is that she not only manages this work as its president and CEO, she's also a very consistent and strong voice that reminds us that every person is created in God's image, and that ultimately all that we do through these kinds of efforts, is centered on respecting the human dignity of each and every human person. She communicates that so well, and really calls on us to recognize that and to take action.
Well, I will have to admit that It was because I saw her picture that I was intrigued. I paused,
Sure,
I stopped, and I said, "Oh, what is this about?" And then I
sure.
shared it to, yeah, it's on my social media. So who should attend this conversation, and what do you hope people will walk away with afterward?
Yeah, so it's open to everyone, as I said. So it's free of cost. It just come and join us that evening at 7 p.m. If you want to learn more about the reality of hunger and what we can do in response to hunger, please join us. And while Sister Norma will provide some of the local context and talk about what we're currently doing and understanding why it matters to us from a faith perspective, Reverend Cho, Eugene Cho, was a very excellent speaker and communicator, will also help address the importance of building on the charitable work that we already do through our food pantries and our food programs and so forth. And that everything we're already doing and moving beyond that to also begin engaging in faith-based advocacy to help solve the problem of hunger. And
Felipe,
so,
when we talk about hunger, it feels a little bit abstract.
sure.
We people really don't see it. Um, what does hunger actually look like on the ground in the Rio Grande Valley right now? Prices are up, groceries are up. Um, there's a lot of food insecurity. We keep saying the valley is one of the poorest regions in the nation. But
Yeah.
what does it look like on the ground?
Well, as you mentioned, I mean, but the biggest factor, of course, that drives hunger and food insecurity is poverty. And the valley remains an area where over 25% of our population lives below the federal poverty level. That's twice the national rate. Okay, so that we have that as a basis. So in addition to other factors such as the fact that we need a more comprehensive public transportation system so people can get to the food and take care of their other needs like that. People are hungry because they much stretch their already limited incomes to meet a lot of basic needs, housing, healthcare, in addition to providing enough food. So just to give you a better picture, I mean, here are a couple of data points that relate to hunger in the valley. I mean, according to Feeding America, which is the national network of food banks across the nation, almost 25% of the people in the valley are food insecure. We mentioned that term. What does that mean? Well, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, food insecurity is when people either run out of food, don't have enough to eat, can't eat nutritionally balanced meals, or cut back or skip meals. Basically, it's often not knowing where if you're going to make ends meet to have enough food today, this week, for this month. And so at some point in the year, people are experiencing these kinds of situations.
That's a very good explanation. I
Yeah.
wanted to ask, programs like SNAP and WIC are
Mm-hmm.
often misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
I know that people that work full-time jobs still qualify for SNAP and WIC
Yeah.
benefits. They're working
Yeah.
full-time jobs. So what does that
Yeah.
say about the state of our nation where corporations are getting record profits? And
Yeah.
they're not paying their workers enough money so that they still qualify for SNAP. What does that
Yeah.
say?
Yeah, I mean, so when you consider the fact that about maybe 3 in every 10 Valley households relies on SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, it's the federal government's primary program to address hunger, and that also that 40% of children in the Valley are participate in SNAP. This translates into nearly 200,000, according to the data we have, 200 million meals a year
Mm,
provided to people in the valley through SNAP.
wow.
Uh, and SNAP benefits in Texas only provide currently in Texas provide $6.20 a day per person. So
And
when you
was that something that was recently changed? It used to be more per person, now it's less. Is that correct?
I don't know if I can answer that question. I'm not for sure.
Mhm.
But the latest data we have is that it's about $6.20. But when you consider the average cost of a meal in the valley is about $3 per meal, that's not enough to cover 3 meals a day, right?
Mm,
And
no.
so that is where so that's why many SNAP recipients, as you mentioned, many of whom work full time or work part time jobs, still have to turn to food pantries to help make ends to have enough food. And you mentioned WIC, just to tell briefly what that is, in case people don't know what that is. It's a supplemental program for women, infants, and children, or WIC, which helps expectant mothers purchase nutritious food and also covers their children nutritional needs for up to age 5.
Mm-hmm.
So it also provides education for these families and lactation counseling for mothers and so forth. Last year, WIC served over 800,000 women and children in the valley. So, that's a significant part of our population.
You said how many?
800,000 individuals, women and children in the valley. Yes, women valley. and their children. So it's a combined number of women and children.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So with children, 800,000.
Yeah.
Okay, if you don't mind getting into policy,
Sure.
There's been major changes to SNAP under HR1, which is the big beautiful bill. And I believe they're now in effect. What are the most important changes people should understand?
Sure. Well, HR1, the big beautiful bill, as it's so-called, has made very significant changes to SNAP. It's the most significant changes to the program in its entire history. Generally, these changes fall into 3 areas. One is states previously have had to cover 50% of the administrative costs. That number is increasing to 75%. So that's already an additional cost, Then there are also changes to the work requirements, which I can explain in a moment, which means that several populations, including older adults, parents, some parents, not all parents, and veterans will now have to meet work requirements to remain in or qualify for SNAP. And the third change is that states may have to shoulder an actual cost of the benefits, not only administrative costs, for the first time in its history, depending on their so-called error rate, the error rate. And I'll tell you what that is. Basically, these changes are the ones that have been made to the bill.
Mm-hmm. My goodness.
So,
the expanded work requirements now affect older adults, parents, and veterans. Why is that especially challenging here in South Texas?
Well, previously, people over age 54 did not have to work to qualify. That age has now changed to 65 and older. So already additionally, it used to be that parents who had children under age 18 were exempt from the work requirement. Now it's children, they have children under age 14. And finally, veterans were automatically exempt from the work requirements. They're no longer exempt from those requirements. There are also a couple of other populations, homeless and youth aging out of the foster care system. They have to work now.
Wow.
So why is that challenging for our area? Well, it comes back to the issue of poverty, and you touched on it earlier. People simply do not make enough in the jobs that they can find in the valley, that they can get, in order to allow them to maintain work. So many people work at low wage jobs that don't have regular hours, or may not be able to get enough hours a week. You have to work 20 hours a week now under SNAP to remain on it. If there are gaps in that employment due to circumstances, illness, you're laid off for whatever reason, if you can't meet that requirement, you will be off of SNAP for 3 months before you can.
You won't qualify until 3 more months. My goodness.
Right. So all those things are going to disrupt, and they're going to affect all these populations that we mentioned.
They're making it more difficult. This big, beautiful bill has made it more difficult. I wanted to go back to the error rates.
Yes.
There's also a new cost sharing provision where states have to help pay for SNAP benefits, as you were saying, if their error rates are high. So Texas currently has an error rate of over 8%.
A little bit over 8%. Yeah, a little bit over 8%.
And so they have to bring it down to 6% by 2028. What does that mean for the family here?
That's a very wonky kind of a thing. What is the error rate? Well, first of all, it does not have to do with waste, fraud, and abuse that we hear a lot about. The error rate is the combined percentage that a state comes up with for either not qualifying somebody who should be qualified, or by qualifying someone who should not be qualified. So when you look at those, whatever those percentages are, if that percent in a given year is above 6%, the state's going to have to start paying for an actual cost share of the cost of those benefits. So Texas currently is a little bit over 8%. They need, according to the law, they need to get it down to 6% or less to avoid that share.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is that states that are at the 6% rate, a little bit above the 6% rate, will have to contribute 5% of the actual cost. And it can go as high as 15%, depending on how high that error rate is.
Okay.
So what does that mean? That means the concern is that the Texas legislature may not budget when that year comes around to cover those costs. And then we still don't have any guidance what's going to happen in that case. More than likely, our fear is that that means that the total amount of benefits available to Texas is going to be less than it should be if the legislature opts not to contribute to that, if Texas has to. That
So
means, yeah.
that's something that we have to ask our state representatives.
Right. We need to keep an eye on their error rate. And if it does go above 6%, start advocating not only at the federal level for these programs, but now also at the state level that they provide the requirement there. Of course, what we're trying to do now is to roll back some of these changes. So there are bills in Congress right now to try to undo some of these changes. And a lot depends on what happens over the next several months, if that's going to happen
Yes.
or not.
So from your perspective, Felipe, what's the real risk for families in the Valley who are currently receiving SNAP?
Well, I mean, the risk is, just to recap, if the work requirements, if they cannot keep that work requirement going, then they're going to be off. The other thing I didn't mention is that not only are the work requirements a burden on those individuals, it's a burden on the state, because now they got to keep up with the work requirements for an even bigger share of the population. And the system is going to have to keep up with that. And of course, the legislature opts not to kick in their share. If it comes to that, then people are just going to be dropped. So, the real risk for families that we're going to see those percentages that I shared earlier. Instead of, 1 out of every 4 households on SNAP, that number is going to probably go up in the coming couple of years.
So the Big Beautiful Bill was is a cost of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's in direct relation to it. And so our Congresswoman, Monica de la Cruz, voted for this bill. She
Yes.
advocated for it. She
Yes.
sits on the House of Agriculture Committee, which has direct oversight over SNAP. How important is her role right now? She's here in the Valley where as we're saying, 25% of the population, 800,000 people have received, the WIC benefits. And this is so important, right? I mean, it goes without saying the importance of it. What should constituents in the Valley be asking her to do?
Sure.
Or
Well,
to
I mean, first of
oppose?
all, I mean, to be fair, I mean, she has been consistently supportive of WIC funding. That's one thing that she supports. WIC, there could be more funding for WIC because only like half of the eligible population in the country currently can receive those benefits, because WIC has to be funded every year. So there's when Congress appropriates or decides how much to fund WIC, once the money runs out, that's it. Nobody else can be served. So that's one thing. But as you said, she did vote for the Big Beautiful Bill. Prior to the bill, she made statements and issued testimony that said she was concerned about SNAP and protecting those benefits. But when it came down to it, she sided with the rest of her party and supported it. So what should we be doing? We should continue to let her know that we're concerned, that it matters to us, and remind her of the need to try, to join in efforts to try to change some of those things that were put into place by the bill, and let her know that she has a constituency that does care about hunger, not only because we're policy wonks or that we care about this stuff, because it concerns us, because our faith calls us to do something about it. We're compelled to feed the hungry, to care for those who are in need. It's a way of putting our love into action, and it's not, it includes acting in the public space, not just on a personal level.
Voting is a matter of faith, both as
Yes.
constituents and as politicians, I would say. So
Yeah.
voting is a matter of faith. As an elected official, I would have really, really looked at what I was voting for or
Sure.
against.
And for those of us who elect our elected officials, it's not only voting that's an act of faith, it's continuing to engage and communicate with them. Advocacy is an act of faith also.
I'm going to say it again. Where have you been my whole grassroots life?
Well, it's not only me, there's a lot of us, but yeah.
Where have you all been? I am
Yeah.
so glad. I'm so glad of, hearing this and finding out who you are in the group and um, all this organization that is happening that I had no idea was happening. I am so thrilled about it. I want to wrap up, Felipe, for
Mhm.
listeners who are worried about these SNAP changes. What can they do right now?
Well, first of all, learn about those changes. And I'm happy to share with you a place that summarizes some of these changes that we talked about, and and then help people understand them. If they encounter somebody who's in SNAP, there's concern about that, so that they can help them figure out what they need to do. Watch for action alerts from Bread for the World at bread.org, bread.org, and communicate with our members of Congress on legislation to roll back some of these changes to SNAP. And I'll mention WIC. On WIC, continue to advocate every year to continue to support that program. It has always had strong bipartisan support. We want to keep it that way. But a
Hmm.
couple of years ago, the House was ready to cut back some of the funding, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So we got to continue to fight for WIC annually. So,
Wow. Well, advocacy, writing letters, meeting with representatives, and showing up, they really do matter. It
yes.
really does make a difference. Even when people are ignored, they still need to continue, persist, and push back against policies that are hurting our community. So,
Yeah.
as we close, Felipe, what's the one thing you want people in the Rio Grande Valley to understand about hunger, SNAP, and federal nutrition programs?
Well, I would say about hunger that it's part, unfortunately, it's part of our human reality. And because we are, people of faith, it's a call to respect the dignity in the other person. So first of all, being concerned that people are hungry, that nobody should have a problem with the fact that children or people of any age are going without food. When it comes to the federal nutrition programs and so on, I go back to that same thing. Protecting those programs, I didn't mention it earlier, but why it matters is that when you add up all of the combined charity that our churches and nonprofits and charitable organizations do to fight hunger in this country, that all the combined effort of all these federal programs we've been talking about is 10 times the amount that all of our charitable actions do to help fight hunger. So yes, we need to continue supporting our food pantries, our food banks, and other local things we can do to help people in immediate need. But we can never work our way out of this problem of hunger relying on charity alone. If we're
Right.
going to resolve it, we need to put this faith into action. Call our calling. We're blessed that we are citizens of a country where our voice matters, and we need to use that voice. Not only because we need to be good citizens, it's because that's being a good Christian, a good person of faith. We have this ability. It's a God-given gift. Let's use it.
Beautiful words. In a country so wealthy such as ours, no one should go hungry.
Yes, exactly.
Felipe Salinas, thank you so much for your time and for the work that you're doing in the Valley. And thank you to our listeners for tuning into the Rio Grande podcast. We will include information about February 3rd dialogue in the show and in the notes. And until next time, take care of one another. God bless.
Bye bye.